Hi everyone, welcome back to Almost Normal. I feel like in previous podcast episodes or just previous general YouTube videos that I've posted, I have mentioned once or twice that I am an addict. I am a drug addict and I am an alcoholic. I have been sober from those things for 4 years. 4 and a bit years. My sobriety date is October 26th. So yeah, I've been sober for like 4 years and some change. Even though I have been sober for 4.5 years, I still call myself an addict. Still call myself an alcoholic. I probably will till the day I die. It's just a way that I identify myself. Obviously, it's not the only way, but being an addict is a huge part of me. And being sober is also a huge part of who I am and all of that. And I get it's confusing because people are like, if you stop doing the drug and drinking, like how can you still call yourself an alcoholic? But the thing is that being an alcoholic is just like having any other kind of mental illness. You know, you're born with it. It's inside of you. It's not something external. It's not that like you could take an external thing away and it'll change you. It's just like having anxiety or depression or anything like that. But I asked the internet to define an addict just because I don't want to get anything wrong. So I'm just going to read it. At its core, an addict isn't just someone who uses substances. It's someone who feels compelled to engage in behavior despite negative consequences. Addiction is less about what you're addicted to and more about why you keep doing it and how it impacts your life. The clinical definition is, according to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, addiction is a chronic brain disorder involving compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite harmful consequences. The DSM-5 categorizes addiction under substance use disorders, but acknowledges that addictive behaviors can function similarly. Addiction is often linked to dopamine dysregulation, meaning the brain craves a substance or behavior because it has learned to associate it with relief, excitement, or comfort. And then it also says an addict is someone who feels powerless over a habit or behavior even when they recognize it's causing harm. This doesn't always mean using drugs or alcohol. Addiction can show up in many forms. Okay, it's given a lot of different definitions, but whatever. Being an addict is a brain disorder. Something that kind of helped me understand this a little bit more when I first got sober. I was speaking to a woman at an AA meeting and she basically was like, alcohol and drugs are not the problem. Alcohol and drugs are in fact the solution. And I was very confused by this, but basically she explained that as an addict, you're usually suffering from some sort of underlying condition, depression, anxiety, anything. And one day, an addict decided to drink alcohol or take a drug. And in that moment, they realized that the internal pain, the internal struggles just became so silent. And it was like a moment of relief where they didn't have to fully deal with everything that they were dealing with inside their brains. So the brain then reminded them every single time they felt bad that they could take a drink or they could do a drug and they would feel so much better. And so that became a habit. You know, every time that person felt bad, they would reach for a bottle of alcohol or whatever. And so this just goes on and on and on. And even though after drinking and doing drugs, we know that there have been consequences and there still will remain consequences in the future, we are unable to understand that and we are unable to stop because the relief that the alcohol and drugs give us is so strong that we're just like, oh, I can't consider everything else around me that's happening. I just need to drink now. And yes, I may be a horrible person. I may steal. I may crash my car. I may do all of this stuff. But the pain that I'm feeling inside is so deep and strong that I feel like I don't have a choice. I would say that that is probably the definition. And so when you take the alcohol and the drugs away, though you're not high or drunk anymore, you are still the same person. You still have the same brain. You haven't rewired anything. You're still the person you were born as. And there's still this obsession with drinking or doing drugs because your brain is still obsessed with the idea that if you're having a bad day, if you're feeling shitty, you can go drink some vodka or whatever and you'll feel better. And it's kind of like a constant thing that we have to remind ourselves of to say like, okay, yes, doing this and that might make us feel better, but we have to consider the consequences of that. And that is kind of a lot about like what Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. It's just very focused on like community and having people around you to remind you, being like, I know how you feel, and I know that there are days where you just want to have a drink because life is getting a little bit too lifey or whatever, but like I'm here to remind you of what will happen if you do that, you know, and to try and give yourself a moment to think as to whether you really, really want to drink again or do a drug again or whatever. Anyway, that is kind of how I would define addict and alcoholic. It's a mental disorder. It's something that happens inside. It's nothing that any outside factors have affected. Yes, maybe there are certain triggers in the world that sort of make it worse, but at the end of the day, being an addict or an alcoholic is something that you were born with. It's not something that just happens over time. Unfortunately, some people are born with it, some people aren't, but like whatever. Like the world isn't just alcoholics and non-alcoholics, you know? It's like people are ailed with hundreds of different things. Like I just happen to have been born with an addiction to things, and I have to spend my life now making sure that I know not to do those things anymore, because otherwise the consequences will be bad. And that is just what I have been served in life, and that's fine, you know? I have made my peace with it. Being an alcoholic actually it sounds weird, but it's honestly probably one of the best things that has ever happened to me, because through being sober, through doing this work, like I have learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about the people I surround myself with. I've learned so many great tools in order to make my life easier. You know, huge things like learning to say I'm sorry, learning to see that every time you go through a problem, it's not always someone else's fault, you know, being able to feel less controlling of other people, which was a huge thing of mine. And I think that without being an alcoholic, without being an addict, like I would never have sat and done this work. You know, I would never have been like, what's my side of this problem? You know, I there would have been no reason for me to really properly like dive deep into that. So in a way, I'm very, very happy that I was born this way, because I kind of get a gift that other people don't have, which is I'm forced to sit and think about who I am and how I react to the world and what kind of friend I am, what kind of daughter I am, and all of that stuff. And so in a way, I'm very pleased. In a way, I have been forced to take a look at myself in a way that I probably wouldn't have otherwise, and I feel really quite good about that. Also, I surround myself with other alcoholics. I surround myself with other mostly sober alcoholics, if I can help it. And those are the kinds of people that I want to surround myself with forever. Like, they are just amazing people, because they've all done, you know, this sort of inner work too. And I've never really been able to feel so like open with people before. I've spent my whole life kind of feeling a bit like a outsider, a bit like a freak, to be honest. And then I found this like group of women who are just like me and have all these experiences that are just like mine, and it's like the craziest fucking shit ever, because I'm just like, oh my god, like these are stories I wouldn't want to tell anyone, and now it's like I love telling them. It's so fun because like there's always going to be someone around being like, oh, that happened to me too, that's so crazy. And like, you know, just being in a moment where I'm able to like laugh at that stuff and just be like, that was so ridiculous. Like, you know, my most shameful stories, my most embarrassing stories, like things that I never thought I ever wanted to talk about, let alone tell anyone else about. And now here I am, like laughing about it at dinner with great people, you know, just like really putting it all out there. Huge thing about being sober that I am obsessed with is just feeling that I can be honest about everything. I think something that gave me such bad anxiety, which probably led me to drink and do drugs, was I was such a big secret keeper. I kept so many secrets, and I was always on full surveillance mode. I was always on full control mode, because I spread so many lies and I needed certain people to believe certain things and other people to believe other things. Otherwise, I would look like a bad person. And, you know, it's really anxiety inducing when you're hanging out with someone and you can't quite remember like what you told this person. Someone said to me, like, what did they say? They were like, when you stop lying, you have a lot less to remember. And that is so true. It's like I had these scripts, these stories that I like came up with in my head. I had to remember them like word for word in my brain just in case just so I didn't slip up. And now it's like everything I say is just true. And I don't have to remember anything. It's just there. It's just in my experience. It's just great. I really can say that getting sober was the best thing that I have ever done. And I'm so thankful and pleased. Yes, it took dark days to get here. 100%. I needed to really be shat on by life, like really badly. I needed to be fucking put at the bottom of the pit in order to realize that I needed to make some fucking serious changes. And yes, so horrible, wouldn't wish those moments on my worst enemies. Literally, I shudder to think of that time in my life. But without that, I wouldn't be here. You know, I wouldn't be feeling as I do today. So anyway, apart from me like reminding myself that I'm an addict every day, you know, apart from those moments at parties where I wish I could like do some coke or something and having to be like, Rita, no, like it's not for you. You know what happens when you do that. You know what happens when you do that. Like, no. Apart from those moments, there are so many other little telltale signs that I'm an addict in my day-to-day life. It's crazy. I think it's quite common for addicts once they get sober from the thing that was like fully ailing their life. So for me, it was drinking alcohol and doing drugs. I think that when a lot of addicts kick that sort of main thing, the DOC, the drug of choice, it is fairly common to try and replace that addiction with something else. And there's a bunch of reasons for this, but a huge reason is that an addict has a real issue with dopamine, and we just want to find dopamine anywhere we can get it. And we're like, okay, I can't get dopamine from picking up a bag of cocaine, and I can't get dopamine from blacking out, but maybe I can figure out little loopholes, little ways that I can find dopamine in my day-to-day life without the drugs and the alcohol. And I have certainly found mine. I have certainly found a few ways in order for me to do that. That's kind of what I wanted to mainly talk about today, because I have gone fully insane, basically. Now, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and like a big thing with that, big point to that is that you can be in a community of other like-minded people. So when you're feeling a little bit wiry, a little bit like, you know, on the edge, you have like a plethora of people that you can speak to. You can call people, you can just sort of get out of your own head, you can just ask them how their day was, you can stop focusing so much on yourself. You know, an alcoholic is like a very self-centered person. People with any kind of like mental disorder, you know, our mental disorders make us very, very selfish because we're so just fully obsessed with like our past, our future, everything. And so a part of AA that helps people is the fact that if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling super self-obsessed, then you can sort of just like ask someone else how their day was, you know, you can sort of just like get out of your own head, whatever. But this is not foolproof, you know, and life still does life. And just because I'm sober, I have my up days, I have my down days. I'm not perfect. I don't call people when I feel shitty sometimes because I just like don't want to talk to anyone. Don't ask people how their days are when I'm feeling shitty. I just don't care. And I know that if I did, I'd feel better, but I just like can't bring myself to do it. Like, I'm an addict at the end of the day. Like, I'm not a perfect person. I'm not just doing things completely by the book. Like, absolutely not. I have days where I am just as bad as I would be drinking, but I'm just like not drinking. I'm rude, I'm annoying, I'm selfish, I'm just like, bleh. When these days come along, I have a few things that sort of maybe help me get by a little bit, which I definitely shouldn't be indulging in, but I do. The one thing that I do in order to give myself that little dopamine kick that I am just craving. Two things, actually. One is nicotine. I am absolutely addicted to nicotine. It's really interesting because when I was drinking, I smoked all the time, but like I could say no to a cigarette, you know? I didn't need it. I wasn't smoking throughout the day. I would probably just smoke once I was drunk or high or whatever. But I smoked all the time. If I wasn't feeling like a cigarette, I would say no. Now that I don't drink, if someone offers me a cigarette or someone offers me a puff of their vape or something like that, like, I'll be saying yes, 100%. Like, there's never a time where I say no. I find it really, really hard to quit vaping. I'm actually, at the moment, in a cycle of trying to quit, let's just say, because I have tried to quit so many fucking times. But I am currently in a moment of trying to quit. So I smoke vapes mostly now, because I just find that they're easier and they're so quick, which is like the biggest problem about them. The thing with a cigarette is that if you're trying to quit smoking cigarettes, there's this sort of routine between not smoking the cigarette and smoking the cigarette. You got to get your packet out. You've got to get your lighter. You know, you've got to probably most likely step outside somewhere and find somewhere to smoke. Like, there's a moment between not smoking and smoking where you can sort of rethink your decision. You know, put the cigarette back in, put the lighter back in your pocket, decide not to get up from the dinner table and go outside. And there you have it, you haven't smoked a cigarette. Whereas with vaping, it's like, it's right next to you, you pick it up, you smoke it, and you put it down. Like, there's no moment for a breath. There's no moment for like reflection on what I'm about to do. And I think that is one of the reasons why vaping is so fucking addictive, because there isn't a moment to breathe. There's not a moment to pause where you could be like, okay, like, actually no. So anyway, I'm fully addicted to vaping and I have been trying to quit. I'm in a moment where I'm trying to quit. And this is how addicted I am. Okay, so I said I have this one vape. Once this vape dies, I will not be buying another one. Like, I am not buying another one. That is what we're going to be doing. Obviously, quitting is going to be so hard. I just have to be strong for the first few weeks. Like, once this dies, I will not buy another one. I will not go to the vape shop. Like, that is my word. Okay, so first of all, I have this one vape and it dies, basically runs out of juice. Because of the addict I am, I continue to charge it and charge it and charge it until I'm like literally just smoking like straight plastic, like nicotine all gone, flavored juices all gone. Every puff I take, it just tastes like burning plastic. It's absolutely horrendous, but I cannot let this thing go. I'm like, please, no, don't die on me. And I'm literally killing myself, smoking like the dregs of this vape, like so bad. There's probably no medical studies that have gone into what happens when you smoke this plastic, because I'm sure like no one really does it. I got to a point where I was like, I didn't even think this is giving me the hit that I need, because I genuinely think like the nicotine has just gone. I think it would be basically like smoking just the filter of cigarettes. Once the cigarette's gone, just like smoking the little plastic foamy bit at the end. Probably say that is the equivalent of what I was doing with the vape. So I had to throw it away and I was like, oh my God. I then realized that I have this sofa where I sit a lot. And in moments where I wasn't trying to quit vaping and I was just very happy to go buy another one, I realized that a bunch of times I was sitting on that sofa, I had that moment where I looked for my vape and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like looking for it and searching for it and it just like had disappeared. And so I was like, fuck it, I'll just like go buy another one when I go out. And I never retrieved the vape from underneath the sofa. So I had that light bulb moment the other day and I was like, perhaps there's an old vape under there somewhere that I can find. So I got my little flashlight, I went downstairs, got on my hands and knees, looked under the sofa, and lo and behold, I found a vape that had probably been there for years, covered in dust. The colouring of the outside plastic had genuinely started to fade. It was so old. I charged that baby and I smoked that baby, and here it is. It remains with me. I have a problem. You know, no, those are the moments where I'm on my hands and knees in dust trying to find an old fucking vape that may or may not be there. Like, in those moments, I know I'm an addict. I don't need alcohol to tell me that. Like, I can tell in my moments of desperation, I can tell. This is something I'm finding very, very hard to kick. The other thing that I find so hard to kick, the other little dopamine hit that I get, is from shopping. I cannot stop shopping. I don't even know what part of shopping I'm so addicted to. I cannot help myself. Online shopping, in-person shopping, like any of it. I do it all the time. Honestly, just like any other addiction, when I like click buy or when I give my credit card to the cashier, I have a genuine feeling of like guilt and sickness and just sadness, you know, just like I did when I would drink vodka at 9 a.m. or vape makes me sick sometimes. Like, just like those things, Shopping gives me an actual physical feeling of ick when I do it. I can't stop. And like, that is the thing about addicts. It's like, we know the consequence. We know how we're going to feel after we do this. So why do we keep doing it? Because we can't help it. Because we just are so desperate for that initial dopamine hit. We just completely ignore all of the consequences, how bad we're going to feel later, because we just need that dopamine hit. We just need to feel relief for a second. And that is what shopping gives me. And I would probably say that I tend to feel shitty about it once I've clicked buy or once I've paid. About 10 minutes after I do that, maybe not even 10, 5 minutes after I do that, I get this actual physical feeling of illness inside of me. This leads me to believe that the dopamine hit comes from either paying or it comes from like searching the web, doom scrolling, or like walking around the shop and like picking things up. I can tell that the dopamine hit does not come from when I come home with a bag full of clothes. Like, the dopamine is over, I already feel bad, I want to return everything, and I don't return shit. I don't return shit. I'm lazy as fuck. I don't return anything. I come home with bags of clothes, like, I'm not excited by it anymore. When I go and retrieve packages from my online shopping extravaganzas, like, I don't really care. I don't get excited. Sometimes, and I'm so bad, sometimes I'll get a package and I don't even know what's inside of it. I'm like, oh, this is a complete surprise for me. Like, what did I order? That's when you know it's fucking bad. When you're ordering stuff and you don't even know like what it is once it's returned, like you're completely already over it that you don't even remember. Yeah, but I have been going through that recently so badly. Another thing that I do, which is like a OCD addict kind of thing, is that if I like something, I'll buy multiples of them because I have such a fear of like the one thing I like getting dirty or losing it, you know, like, yes, okay, maybe I like spill coffee on my shirts and stuff, but I put them in the wash and then they're fucking fine. Like, there haven't been many times where I've had like a favorite t-shirt and I've like completely destroyed it. Like, when and where and how am I managing to do that, you know? Like, maybe if I do like a mud wrestling or something, but like I don't tend to do that very much. I don't think I've ever done mud wrestling before. Like, when in my life have I had like a favorite piece of clothing that I've just completely ruined? Like, not that many times. So this fear of like doing that, of ruining something, of losing something, and so needing a replacement is very interesting, and I don't really know where it comes from, to be honest. But that's another problem, you know. I don't just want one thing. I need multiple. Like, I have one pair of jeans that I wear all the time, and I have like 10 pairs of them. I have t-shirts, and I can't just buy one. I need multiples of them. That's another huge thing for me, is that I have a problem with only having one thing, which is definitely an addict's thing. Like, I also get that when I go out for dinner. Like, I have this huge fear that we're not going to have enough food, so I always overorder. Yeah, it's like, it's also just like a fear of not having enough, I think. It's like a fear of running out or losing things or being without that thing that I need. I'm sure that comes from like when I was drinking and doing drugs, like, it's 8 a.m., the bag has run out. It's that like anxiety that I need something, my brain needs something, and I don't have it. I'm sure it stems with that. I'm sure it's connected to that sort of anxiety that I'm used to, where I like run out of something my brain needs, and then I'm like, so in order to fix that, I ordered too much food at dinner, and I always buy things in twos. Like, that's just what I do. I would say it's huge impulse control issues. I think a huge part of my shopping addiction and my vaping addiction and ordering too much food and any of that stuff, like, is a huge part of it is just huge issue with impulse control. You know how I said, like, once I buy the thing, I like the excitement goes and I just start feeling kind of like gross about it. Like, that leads me to believe that I never really wanted the thing that I bought in the first place that much, because surely if I did, I would still be kind of happy about it. I'd still be excited about the fact that I had it, and I'm not, which leads me to believe that the happiness, the dopamine that I'm receiving from buying the object has nothing to do with the actual object itself, which then leads me to believe that if I just decided to take a breath and leave the store without the thing, then I probably would feel just as good, probably even better, because I wouldn't have this like horrible, guilty shame feeling that I just like spent the money that I don't have on something that I like don't need and don't want, and now I'm like carrying around this bag with the stuff in it that I like don't care about at all. I think that if I was able to work on my impulse control issues, I would be able to avoid spending a lot of money, you know? Because I think that if I have a moment just to think about what I'm doing, and if I force myself to take that moment to consider, then I might find that I spend much less money and probably vape a lot less. Just like I was saying, like with smoking a cigarette, like because there's this routine, there's this moment between not smoking and smoking, that is like kind of forcing you to have a moment to reflect on like whether you actually want to do this thing or not. Whereas like vaping does not have that. Vaping is just like instantaneous. I'm wondering whether like if I just take a moment when I'm in the shop, when I'm about to buy something, if I just like sit and take a moment and force myself to consider whether I really, really want the thing, like, will I spend less money? Will I shop less? And I think the answer is yes. Because there have been one or two times where I go into a shop and I realize that I don't have my credit card. And so I leave without the thing that I thought I wanted. And like literally 2 hours later, I don't even remember wanting the thing. And I wonder if I just do that every single time, like I probably would end up coming home with a lot less stuff. Just giving myself that moment to be like, do we need this or no? Or am I just being crazy and impulsive and I don't actually want this? I just like at the moment need a dopamine hit and this is the way I'm reaching for it. Like maybe I won't need that dopamine hit in like 2 seconds. Which also goes to my next point, which is like, when do I do these impulsive actions? When do I do random shopping sprees? When do I really obsessed with vaping and smoking? And I find that there are moments where I'm like dissatisfied with something in my life. You know, I'm not fully committed to AA. I'm not really filling my life up with things that'll actually make me feel better, like friends and family. Like I'm sort of dissatisfied in some way. And so in order to feel like I can satisfy myself, I shop and I smoke. And I do notice that like when I go crazy, and these shopping sprees last for a while, by the way, like they can last for days. I could just like continue to want to shop for days. And it's the most sad, unsatisfying moment in my life whenever I go through that. Just like I go like blank and drony and I'm just like on default mode and I'm just like it's like I'm trying to like purchase happiness and it's just like not going to be happening. I do have to sort of understand like, when do I do this? Like when do I go on mad shopping sprees? When do I obsess over smoking? Like when do these things come up for me the most? And it's 100% when I'm like just dissatisfied with my life in that moment. And so in thinking that, like, I'm sure a huge way to relieve myself of impulse purchasing and all of that would be to try and like replace those habits with like other habits. So instead of feeling dissatisfied in life, needing a dopamine hit, and then because I've taught myself that sometimes I get dopamine from buying a new sweater, instead of going straight to that, trying to like replace that with something else that will give me dopamine, or at least something that will give me a moment to consider whether I like genuinely want to buy the thing. And I think that's something that I really need to work on. Like, okay, when you feel like you need that dopamine hit, when you're feeling unhappy and you feel like you need like something to like buzz you up, and you feel like you want to just go walk into Aritzia and spend $400, like instead of doing that, let's just try something else, you know? And that could be walking around, listening to music. That could be calling a friend. That could be anything. Like, I think that the initial sort of like change in habits is so hard. And I feel like I'm trying to work on that now. Just trying to be more aware of like my impulse control issues. And I think like the first step is just trying to sort of replace these addictions with positive things to try and get your dopamine hits from elsewhere. That doesn't mean that you're killing your lungs or spending all your life savings on like crap and then like feeling even more depressed because you're like surrounded by shit that you don't want. Like maybe there's another solution. Maybe we could do something that doesn't involve any of that. I think that if I do that enough, that'll start to become my new habit. I don't know how many days they say it takes to form a habit, but I think it's like 30 days. So if you do something every day for 30 days, then it just becomes like part of your ritual, part of your life. I actually just recently bought Atomic Habits, which I'm excited to read. I remember reading the first chapter and loving it, but it definitely like goes into what I'm like trying to figure out right now. I think that I have just learned habits. I think I've just learned coping mechanisms to make myself feel good, to replace alcohol and drugs. And like, yes, okay, I will admit, vaping sometimes or shopping sometimes is a much better solution for my depression than picking up drugs and like ruining my life, you know, getting in a car drunk and killing someone, hitting someone, calling my friends assholes, just being an overall horrible person that, you know, I'll have to apologize for at some point in my life. Like, admittedly, doing a little shopping, I'll take that over the other alternative. But at the same time, it's not making me happy, and it's like, it's an obvious just addiction replacement. And I am excited to read Atomic Habits because I do feel like it is a lot about relearning yourself, like reteaching your brain what makes you happy and what makes you sad. And I think there will be something to that with this. Like, every time I feel like I want to shop, I'll have to reteach my brain that if I have that feeling, I know that if I call a friend, I'll just feel just as good. And like, I won't have that moment of depression after where I just like feel shitty for doing the thing that I did. So that is something I want to work on for sure. I have just noticed that my shopping has gotten so bad at the moment. And I find that every time I shop recently, the sort of like after depression is getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm like feeling really horrible about myself. I think it kind of started around my birthday. Like, I did a podcast episode saying how my birthday like really affects my mood. And I think that it did. And I think that I was like, oh, it's my birthday, I'm going to go shopping. And so I use that like as an excuse to sort of like treat myself or whatever. But then, like, I couldn't get out of the cycle. And, like, ever since my birthday, I have been shopping like a fucking maniac. And it's been 2 weeks now. And I cannot stop myself. And so last night, I was, like, doom scrolling. And I was like, shit, like, this is making me feel so horrible. Like, I just want to stop this. And I had ordered Atomic Habits, like, a couple days prior without even really, like, thinking about it. But now that I'm thinking about it, like, it's probably, like, going to be very helpful to this. And I also think one other thing that I want to start considering is like why I feel like I need a dopamine hit, like what's going on in my life that's like making me feel shitty, that I feel like I need to distract my brain with something else, you know? Because I think it's very easy for me to feel a feeling and then just sort of like ignore it, but just go and impulsively do something that'll distract me from it. I mean, that's like kind of the whole idea of being an addict, is like we find it hard to feel feelings. We find it hard to face up to whatever is making us emotional. And so instead we just like do something to distract us. And like, obviously that's shopping and vaping is exactly that. It's like, oh, instantly I feel bad, so instantly I'm gonna go do something to distract myself. And so I also think like something that might help is just learning a little better how to be like, okay, I really wanna go randomly shopping now. How do I feel right now? Am I feeling good? The answer is probably gonna be no. Am I feeling good? No. Okay, why am I not feeling good? And then like maybe go through the day and like consider like what could possibly have like switched my mood, or just anything, any trigger, or just how am I feeling? Have I eaten? You know, simple things like that. Have I like gone outside? Simple things like that. Like I noticed that if I stop doing those little things that like usually make myself feel better, I start to get really grumpy, and that's when like shopping and all of that goes really well, like sounds really nice in my brain. Yeah, but this is just something I've been noticing a lot. Like I have always been like this. Even when I was drinking, like I would shop a lot because in those moments where I wasn't drinking, I needed something else to, fill that dopamine up for me. I probably shop just like a lot more now because I'm like needing a lot more dopamine hits than I was before, because at least like I was doing something else to, help, but like blah, 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 blah. It's just sort of like an endless cycle. What do you guys do? Does anyone else relate to this? Like, I would love to know little like tips and rituals that people do in order to not be so impulsive. I think it is a huge part is just impulse control issues, not having a moment to take a breath and being like, hey, do you need this? And the crazy thing is that like, I know how to do that. When I'm at a party and I suddenly feel like anxious and scared and like nervous and socially awkward and all that, and like, I want to have a drink, there's a moment in me, I know that is so bad for me that I've taught myself to take that moment and be like, do you really want to have a drink right now or no? And like, I always walk away from it after giving myself that moment. So it's like, I know how to do that. Every time I go to a party and feel like I want to suddenly like relapse and drink alcohol, like I give myself a moment to consider whether I really, really want this. And I always walk away. But somehow I'm not doing that with the other things. Maybe because I don't consider the consequences as bad or whatever. But I would love to be able to factor that sort of moment in to everything else that I feel like I find it hard to stop, Because yeah, that's interesting. Like I do take a moment a lot. There's many moments in my life where I have to take a deep breath and say, is this really what you want to do right now? And then I'm like able to just like reflect and be like, actually, no, if I'm feeling really shitty, like, let's just go home. Then I'm always like so thankful I'm home and I'm sober and I didn't drink, And all it took was that like one little moment, that one little conversation with myself to be like, is this really what you want? And, the answer being like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. So if I can just bring that into the malls, bring that into the shopping centers, bring that into vaping, like, I do think that is a huge part of it. I just think that in my brain, the consequences of those other things aren't as bad as drinking and drugging. So it's sort of like, I don't push myself to do it as much in those scenarios, but it's like, I know that if I drink or do any drugs, like, I'm going to ruin my life. Whereas in my head, I'm like, oh, if I just buy this thing, I'm not going to ruin my life. Or if I like take a smoke of this cigarette or like hit this vape, it's not going to ruin my life. So it's sort of like, doesn't seem as urgent to take that moment, but like, I definitely should be. And it's getting kind of out of hand at the moment, and I'm feeling really bad about myself. And I really don't want to check my bank balance because I'm afraid, because I just have been absolutely going mad. But yeah, I think the first step is sort of discussing it and yeah, just sort of getting out of a habit, because I've now put myself into a habit where I just instantly shop if I feel bad or instantly vape when I feel bad. And I need to like rewire something. We need to like relearn some shit. So if anyone has any tips, if anyone ever experiences this themselves, let me know what you guys do. I'm always open to suggestion for things that'll just like help me not be so impulsive. I know in moments where I'm just like fully integrated in life, with work and friends and all of that, like I hardly think about shopping. I hardly think about vaping. It's the moments where I'm feeling shitty. That is when I want to vape. That's when I want to shop. Like, I'm aware of that. I'm aware 100% that those two things are absolutely coping mechanisms, and bad ones, negative coping mechanisms. I can tell when I'm fully happy, when I fully feel content in life, like I never go shopping. I hardly vape. Like, I'm not obsessed. I don't have like obsession over those things. But it's when I'm having a bad day, it's when I'm nervous or anxious or depressed or anything, that's when I want to turn to those things and be like, okay, I really want to feel better, so let's do these things. Yeah, that was kind of all I had for today. What do you guys do? Does anyone else experience this? Like, let me know what you do. When you're in the mall and you're holding onto some clothes and you're like about to buy them, like, do you have any way in which you can just like put them down and walk away? Same with vaping or anything, or online shopping. Like when you're about to click buy, is there that moment? Do you give yourself that moment? Or do you have like other little tips that you do? Like, let me know, because I'm struggling at the moment. But I think taking a moment is going to be a big thing for me. But yeah, I love you guys. Let me know if you have any little tips that you do in order to make yourself feel not so obsessed with things. I'm always open to suggestion. But I love you guys so much. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do. It's super helpful to me, and you can see every time I post anything. But I love you. And again, let me know if you have any little tips from an addict to another addict. And I will see you next time. Okay, I love you guys so much.